Hey, welcome to the Glen Gauer podcast, sponsored by Mission Blueprint. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the program. Now, getting to today's topic. There's 3 times in history where God is and or was about to do something really big. 2 of the 3 have already happened. If we look at the historical indicators, or as they say in Texas Hold'em, tells, we see that abortion is the precursor. Look at Moses, the greatest prophet probably in the Old Testament. The Pharaoh, who is a type of Satan, began killing off the Israelite children. Why? Not just because the Hebrews were outgrowing the Egyptians, rather because Satan could discern God was sending a type of savior for the Israelites. The next time in history is the time of Christ. The very king of Israel, if you can believe this, decided to kill every child up to the age of 2. Now, we believe some 14,000 babies died, known as the infamous killing of the innocents. But when's the next time in history? Well, the final time, ladies and gentlemen, is the world we live today. In the last 50 years alone, according to Life News, there have been over 1 billion abortions worldwide. That's right, over 1 billion abortions. Do you not think God is going to act? This is unprecedented in history, as we know.
Wow. That's a B with a billion, not M as a million. B is
right.
a billion.
So we welcome Jamie and Dennis to the show. Say, hey, guys.
Hey, what's going on?
All right, so let's dig in here. Jamie, former President Ronald Reagan reminisced in an interview about his presidency, noting he wished he could have done more in the case of abortion. He is famous for saying, "I've noticed that everyone who is for abortion has already been born." So now, Jamie, you've been called to the state capitol in Pierre twice to testify to Congress. Share with our listeners what happened. Why were you called to the state capitol in Pierre to testify?
So I was called to testify 2 times. I can't remember what the first time I was called. Maybe 2018. The other time was just last year. So the first time I was called, I was asked to give a testimony about our baby who died. And what was that? What was it called?
I think it was the pain capable.
Pain
bill.
capable.
Mm-hmm.
Pain capable Unborn Child Protection Act.
You got it.
And they had, they're trying to make a case that I think it was babies in utero prior to 20 weeks, right?
That's right.
Could feel pain. So this is how they're going to try to pass this pro-life bill saying babies can feel pain, which seems utterly ridiculous. But
so you went up and testified. Why?
I was asked to by a friend of mine who was working at the Capitol at the time.
But why you?
Are you guys for real? Did this really happen?
This
to you?
really happened.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, we get a call, and they wanted to know if Jamie, who lost, we lost our second son, would testify. So what happened is we got pregnant about a year after we had Judah in 2008. Baby looked great until our 13-week ultrasound. Went into the ultrasound.
No, 13 week. No, it
Was
was
it
at the,
the
is it
20
the
week?
20 week. Yeah, yeah. It was. We're going for the big old ultrasound because it looked fine.
That was like your anatomy scan to find out if you're having a boy or girl. So this is week 20.
I thought it was week 13, but so we went into the ultrasound, and the doctor couldn't find kidneys.
What?
And so we thought, you've seen those ultrasounds. I don't know how they can see anything anyway.
I can read them. I
Really?
Know. Oh, yeah. Yep. It was
You're
one of the-
full of... Really?
No, that's what we were taught. And one of the things we were taught in school.
Cool. So we didn't really believe her. She told us several times she's sorry, there's nothing we can do about this. Well, a couple of weeks later, we went up to Billings, and he had one of the best machines in the world. And you could really see everything. Now, this is in 2008. Do you remember that ultrasound? Yeah. So he was showing us where the vein should be and where the kidney should be, and the vein wasn't there. He said for some reason, we don't know why, but that vein just didn't grow, and so that's why your baby doesn't have kidneys. What's interesting, this is a side note, 3 babies were born in the Billings area, or came from the Billings area at the same time with the same condition called Potter's syndrome. So that's what happened to us in 2008. Well, that story caught wind. We joined Focus Ministries shortly after that. That story caught wind, and we met some people in the pro-life movement, and they asked Jamie to go testify. So tell us about what that testimony looked like.
So you find out at 20 weeks that your baby doesn't maybe have kidneys.
Mm-hmm.
So you get a second opinion. Mm-hmm. How long do you carry your baby?
Full term.
Holy cow. Okay, I got to hear the story. I got to hear this.
Yeah. So there's really I thought we already talked about this in a previous podcast. Maybe we didn't. But so they wanted us to go through counseling, thinking that maybe it'd be better for us just in case the baby was born with, I don't know, was malformed. I don't know. They said it could have like an arm growing out the side because there's no amniotic fluid.
Right. It's
no
called
kidneys?
a trisomy dysfunction, and when they don't have kidneys, they can't process fluid,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that's
Lungs and
yeah, it can
everything's
be
affected.
very dysfunctional.
Yeah. So they said, you know, we probably should get you counseling and whatever, just so you're prepared for your baby to be born. And I'm like, no, we don't need that. And they said, well, you could. They did give us the option. I remember now in Billings of, what did they call it? It was basically an abortion.
It was an abortion.
Yeah, but they had some nice word to
But a
it.
termination.
Maybe.
I don't think that's the wording they used, but it was an abortion.
It sounded nice. It was, but
Oh,
it was
humane.
abortion.
Humane.
Oh,
Yeah. And I said, well, if I just keep carrying him, he'll keep living as long as he's inside of me. And like, yes, but you could avoid a lot of pain and suffering if you just
kill your baby.
Yeah.
We thought it was crazy.
Yeah.
And this was at a Catholic hospital, which to me means nothing anymore.
No. So he could have gone naturally anywhere from, well, when we found out, around 20 weeks all the way through 40 weeks. And I started having tons of contractions around 36 or 37.
Yeah, I was right in there.
Like
And
the
it-
Braxton Hicks thing?
No.
Like outright
Yeah, because
contractions.
there's no fluid. There's no fluid to cushion, so it was just like, when things get really going when you are in active labor, that's what it felt like. So, wanted to have him naturally, but my doctor's like, that will probably kill him. So, if you wanted him baptized and whatever, and you want him to live for a little bit longer, C-section was the only way to go. So that's why we had to do that.
That
way.
makes sense. I mean, with no amniotic fluid, like
So it might be more painful for me, more painful for him. So we elected to do the C-section on a Sunday morning. And
November 17th, 2008.
Mm-hmm. So after that, some friends, I don't know how they heard about it, but they wanted to try to pass this bill, and they needed somebody who had a story where they were, because the opposition was coming from, you could save your pain and suffering if you had aborted early. If there's babies who are going to have pain and suffering when they're born, why not just get rid of them early? So they're trying to make this case, and so I thought it would be an easy one to pass, but they I can't remember what his name was. It was a senator. He was a jerk. Remember him? I can't remember.
Don't.
he was in the committee hearing.
Yeah.
Oh, is he from Rapid City?
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And he said his son, he was very opposed to this bill. And he had mentioned, he's like, his son was born, I don't know how early. But he said he was so premature that his skin was burning. And he's like, I just, I can't put my kid through that. And I thought maybe that his son died. But his son was like 10 years old. And I was like, well, you're saying you don't want your son here because you don't want to see him suffer? And he was really rude to me. And yeah. it was quite the experience to testify, but it did pass, and which was awesome for the state of South Dakota. And then recently, last year, I testified again. They're asking that there be a requirement if a mother has a fatal diagnosis, that they be given a brochure about positive things, about resources that could be available, that I wish I had available for us, like a chaplain or, a burial services or things of that nature, where you're not seeking out and trying to find, last minute things where I don't think about a photographer. I'm not thinking about a funeral. I just, I want to get through the next step.
Right. You're having a baby.
Yeah.
And now you're not.
Right. Exactly. And what to do with your body afterwards that nobody thinks about. Right. So that was awesome. That was that passed with flying colors. So, but it's neat. And I just saw Kristi Noem wants to pass 2 really strict pro-life bills just recently. Did you guys see that in the news?
Yeah, it was for this session. Mm-hmm. Yep, she's getting all kinds of criticism from the coasts, both sides, that she's pushing too much of a pro-life agenda.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There was was he a senator? But he read Joseph's testimony on the floor. Do you remember that? And he had a picture of him on his desk. No.
Who's Joseph?
Our son.
Oh, this gentleman who was beating you up read your testimony?
No, it's a different guy he was sponsoring the bill.
We're talking about the pro-life issue. This is pro-life month for the Catholic Church.
January?
Yeah, it is. It's the whole Roe v. Wade month.
Oh.
And it's been a long, what year did that get past? 73?
In the 70s, that's all I know.
73.
Before my time.
And, whether or not that bill, Roe v. Wade, whether that case wins or not, abortion is still a problem. We find that the Romans struggled with abortion. And there's a Catholic historian who did lots of research, said the Romans fell because of 2 things. Abortion and contraception were the 2 things. And they weren't having babies. They averaged about 2 babies per family. Does this sound familiar at all, America? Mm-hmm. And what happened in Rome is, Germania, they weren't contracepting. They just outgrew and infiltrated. And finally, we're bigger than you in numbers. So that's why Rome fell.
That's an interesting point, because in China, you're allowed to only keep 2 babies.
Right.
You can have as many as you want, but you can only keep 2. The rest go to the state.
So the pro-life issue is, for many of us Christians, the issue. If we can't respect human life, what else is there? And then you hear people from the opposition say, well, I'm not a single issue voter. I am. I don't care. If you can't figure out the life part, you have no business being in politics. No business drafting legislation.
Representing the people, if you can't decide that issue. You're right.
It's pretty simple. So this country has, I don't know what the current stats are, but it's around 3,000 abortions a day in America. It used to be up to 4,400, but that has gone down.
See, they gave Tristan and I that option with Kyler.
Did they?
Yep. As soon as they found out that he was a trisomy 17 baby, and his bladder was taking up most of his body cavity, there's no point in carrying him any further. And Tristan and I were like, yes, there is.
Right.
You don't know who's in control.
Right.
This is what it looks like today, but it's only because we looked. We don't know what it'll look like tomorrow.
Right. And it's more of a natural process when you carry the baby, till its natural end. And who knows, if I would have never done it earlier, like what they suggested. But I was like, what am I missing out on if we ended up ending his life earlier than what God wanted?
But isn't that an interesting perspective to take? We can decide because it's inside your womb that it's okay to go, nah, just get rid of it. But we got grandma who's got dementia. Well, why can't we just end her life? She's not going to remember who pulled the plug last week, let alone next week. It's people don't even look at it because this older individual had a whole lifetime of productivity and memories and left a generation. But one is more valuable than the other.
It's messed up.
Isn't that just totally screwy? Like, how can you value one more than the other?
Well, Dr. Jack Kevorkian didn't. Do you remember Dr.
Oh, yeah.
Jack?
Yeah.
Yeah,
He assisted. He was the assistant.
He was the father of assisted suicide. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple fallacies with Dr. Jack Kevorkian. Who's to say there isn't more pain on the other side? Mm-hmm. That's one. But in abortion, I feel really bad for the women. Many women are in these terrible circumstances. They don't know what to do. They feel like this is their only choice. But the regret and the depression that comes later, sometimes up to 10 years later, how is this easy for them to have an abortion like in our situation? Mm-hmm. They couldn't foretell 10 years down the road.
No.
You would have felt bad about that. Listen, I know a guy, a friend of mine, who shared with me several years back that he got a vasectomy. And he had probably got it 10 years, had it 10 years. And he felt bad about it. And he said, ever since I had that vasectomy, every day I think about it. And I asked him, well, what are you going to do? I don't know. My wife doesn't want me to reverse it. She said the day I got it done, she was so grateful. And oftentimes she tells me, I'm so glad you did this. I'm so glad. Well, she didn't want to have any more babies. It was hard on her. But what about him? Thinking about it every day. Mm-hmm. So I told him, this isn't going to go away unless you get it reversed. And he knew what he had to do. Now, I didn't follow up, so I don't know if he had it reversed. But we take such shallow approaches to the most delicate thing, the production of human life. It's crazy.
All of the things, I mean, people just don't get. And if you're back to high school biology, all of the things that have to be perfect. I mean, you can't have a pseudo, like semi-okay environment to get pregnant. It has to be perfect. It has to be perfect in every shape, vector, temperature. Everything has to be right. And that's a freaking miracle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Given our crazy lives and the food we eat and the radio waves we're bounded with and the chemicals that we smell every day, like how we even still can reproduce is unbelievable to me.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. Yeah.
But
And then twins. Then you have twins.
And then you get twins, right?
That's
Right.
just.
But then you talk about like your coincidence of those 3 babies having POTS syndrome in the area. Mm-hmm. Well, holy smokes. Like, was there something in the water? Was there something sprayed over the environment over that part in time? Did a meteor happen to come over this? I mean, like, how do you know? Like, the big thing around here and east of us, over by DeSmet and Arlington, is radon. We didn't know about radon 20 years ago.
Yeah.
40 years ago, we didn't consider what its effects are. You know what radon comes from?
Yeah.
Decaying plutonium.
Oh, boy.
And that's in the old seabed from when the dinosaurs were here that is leaching into the basements of homes, distorting DNA. And it can distort the DNA of a young female that slept in the basement as a child, and now her eggs are affected, and now the children are born with genetic disorders caused by the exposure to the radon 50 years ago.
Wow.
40 years ago. It's unbelievable how you start to unfold these things. Just so exciting.
Yeah, that's crazy.
This is a great time to jump in. Dennis, would you briefly take us through the beginning of life, focusing on what science calls the zinc spark? Tell us about that.
Okay, so here's the thing. I'm going to put my doctor hat on here because this is the entire thing that my profession rests on, okay? And for me, it is such a holy and such a strong religious component that I just don't know how you don't connect the two. But in order to explain the beginning, you have to explain the end. So at the end, would we all agree? We are meat popsicles.
Meat popsicles.
Meat popsicles.
Okay.
What is the difference between... You guys been to a funeral recently? Mm-hmm. Okay. What's the difference between the person laying in the coffin and you observing them?
Separation of body and soul.
We call it animation. In the medical world, we call it animation. You are no longer animated because even somebody who's in a coma has a brainwave, which is echoing through. I mean, I don't think people really completely grab this. There are acid in your stomach that digests protein, meat that you eat through your mouth that doesn't leak out of your stomach and eat you. There's something that keeps it just in your stomach and it doesn't eat you.
Wow.
But when you die, the moment anything dies, roadkill on the side of the road, human beings, animals, snakes, that barrier that keeps all these things that we eat and makes them usable for our body now consume us. How and why? Why? Why?
Whoa.
That's the animating function. It's the spark, and it's what I consider to be the soul. Because the soul is there and the soul is present and it's doing what it was designed and called to do by the Holy Father. Okay? So if that was there at the beginning, and you can go super science with me on this. If matter is neither created nor destroyed, as Einstein said, it merely changes form. Where did that spark start? Mm-hmm. Where did that animating force come from? Because a sperm and an egg are two half cells not living. We've proved that over and over and over and over. In and of themselves, they cannot reproduce. They cannot have a life of their own. They have to form. And further, when you go into the reproductive side of this, when a sperm and an egg are joining, two sperm cannot enter one egg. Mm-hmm. They will fight to break that shell of the egg to get it and fertilize it. But the moment that sperm enters it, you get the zinc spark. It is the fertilization, the union of the two half DNA cycles, creating the full spark. And I call that the spark of life. That's when the soul enters, right there. Because now from that point, that one cell differentiates to 14th to the, or 1 to the 14th power, with enormous amounts of differentiation of cells, kidney cells, liver cells, eye cells, skin cells, hair cells, eye cells. That one cell now knows it has a master commander giving it its destiny.
That's cool.
So that's for me, like, this zinc spark is just, that's the Big Bang right there. And it is so cool to watch underneath the electron microscopes because you can see it. We now cannot just theoretically talk about it and understand that life begins at conception. We can prove it.
So the two sperm that are fighting to fertilize the egg, do you know what that's technically called? It's called the feats of strength. It comes from Seinfeld.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a Seinfeld. Yeah, it's the feats of strength. So one had to outpower the other. Yeah, it comes from, I think it was George's dad. It's his version of Christmas. Do you remember?
and he was Jewish.
Have you ever seen Seinfeld? You've never seen Seinfeld?
A long time
It's
ago.
called the feats of strength. That's where it comes from.
Okay.
But I did hear, and is this what the zinc spark is? So when that sperm does actually fertilize, the first one gets in, well, the first and only one, I heard there's like a shield that goes up.
Yeah, the cell membrane instantly changes. That zinc spark, what we see, the flash, signifies that this is no longer an egg. It is now a cell.
So if you're a Trekkie,
Wow.
it's like James Kirk put up the shields.
Yep.
Shields up,
Shield up. Boom.
boom.
And that takes it from a non-living to a living cell.
But let's talk about this word spark. Okay, it's the
spark.
zinc spark. Is there literally an illumination that happens?
So on an electron microscope, when you look at it, yes, there's a flash of light.
No kidding.
There is a flash of light.
And where does that come from?
No one can explain it. I mean, they want to talk about it being a chemical reaction, the zinc setting literally a chemical fire to the membrane, causing that chemical change. But that's a biochemical reaction. I mean, we don't see carbohydrates burning inside of our cells like fuel inside of the internal combustion engine because it's a different thing, but that's what people relate it to. That's the best explanation science can give us because they don't give it to God.
Yeah.
Say, God said, go.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. The media hates to hear biology.
It's
living in such a scientific world that we're in, when you actually apply biology, the basics of life, they don't want to hear it.
But we don't talk about intellect. We don't talk about the advancement of reason. We'd rather put our kids in front of video games and let them try to memorize math patterns for hours on end. It isn't about taking what we've learned and applying it. I give this to my team all the time. The purpose of knowledge is what? What is the purpose of learning stuff?
Wisdom?
No.
I don't know.
Action.
Action. Okay.
To do something with it. You've learned something new. Now do something with it. Take it the next step. Carry the ball a little bit further than the last guy who learned on this. And once you've got the basics covered, because this is the whole point of our foundational education, or what we call elementary and middle school and high school, is to get a good working base knowledge to go do something. And I don't think that was intended by our design to go serve pizza at Casey's.
As good as it is, I think you're right.
Right. I mean, we're just built for something more. Now, some of us have to admit that if you're going to be a janitor, be the best one you can be. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with being a janitor or being a street sweeper or being the guy who is the greeter at Walmart. But be the best one you can be. We're not all blessed with the ability to put all the pieces of the puzzle together and come up with a masterpiece. But we all play a piece in the master puzzle.
Not everybody can podcast and have 50 listeners like we do.
50,000.
We're at 50,000.
We're at 50,000.
I think it's
listeners.
51 now.
51,000 listeners.
So this is what
Tell your
drives me
friends.
crazy. To be objective, right? What does it mean to be objective? Dennis.
So objective in our world is based against a set of empirical data or data points that are either within normal or outside of normal. So as you would come in as a client, I would do objective testing to determine whether you're a chiropractic client, whether you need to be seen by a medical doctor, if your blood pressure's out of range, if you need to be seen by an orthopedist because there's something dysfunctional in the joint, a neurologist if you're talking about something else. Like there's this whole objective method I have to take with my profession in order to fulfill and complete what is considered subjective entry of patients, because the patient perceives a symptom and they don't know what to do with it.
So this is what drives me crazy.
Okay, I'm all about it.
When you look at the science of the ovum, when you take a look at it for what it is, and juxtapose that with what our TV stars and media people are saying, they're in contradiction.
Absolutely.
So I was watching David Letterman, it must have been 95, 97. And he had the famous model Kathy Ireland on. Do you remember Kathy Ireland?
Yeah.
I think
She's a
any
babe.
man who was sane would remember Kathy
She was
Ireland.
hot.
She was a very good looking woman.
Very hot.
So I thought, okay, Kathy Ireland's on. What could she possibly say? She's a model.
Make more of me.
So anyway, David Letterman, he starts asking questions, and I could tell right away she goes off script because Letterman looks a little uncomfortable. So she's talking about her husband's, who's studying to be, I think, a doctor, but he brought one of his biology books home, and she said, I started opening the book, and I started reading about the sperm and the egg, and I realized, my goodness, that's a baby right away. And I didn't know that. And so she goes into this whole pro-life dialogue with Letterman. And because she's so pretty, Letterman, he didn't have these smart aleck remarks. He just said, and he tried to get off course, and she brought it back. And then finally he got her off course. And I thought, wow, the power of a pretty woman. This is why we have Jamie on, by the way.
That's
the
right.
power of a pretty woman. But this drives me crazy because it seems like there's so many people who look at a biology book with blinders on. They don't want to know the truth because it doesn't fit their
narrative.
And here we are, according to Life News, is it LifeSite News? Life News, over 1 billion people aborted. And we say, oh, Hitler was a bad man. Stalin was a bad man.
Pharaoh was a bad man.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, this is 1 billion people are not on this earth. And you're worried about Hitler, Stalin,
Trump.
Now you should be worried about Biden. What he said to Peter Ducey yesterday.
Bumbling Biden.
He said, that stupid son of a...
I kind of like that bumbling Biden. Okay, but you're right. The narrative of an advanced culture or culture who has got a basis in knowledge and wisdom and reason and logic would look at this and objectively come to a very distinct conclusion. In the absence of any other truth, Occam's razor applies. The simplest truth is the one that fits, and life begins at conception. And you can try to argue it any other way that you want, but all you're doing is you're justifying it on your own rules and on your own grounds because you're not following science. You're not following what is proven in the data, in the pictures, everything out there.
Yeah, the leftists, they dropped that argument. I think it was by the 90s. I don't think they were arguing that anymore. Maybe it was later. Maybe it was 2000s, but they dropped the argument because they didn't want people to go back and actually look. Because when they went back and looked like Kathy Ireland, they realized, oh my gosh, that's a baby. So they just said, my body, my choice. You have the choice. And that was another blinder for so many people. Yeah, I have a right. You have a right to murder. That's what you're saying. Well, it's not a baby. It's what is it then? I always thought it was interesting for those who would say, well, it's not a baby. It's just fleshy cells. But every time a woman gets pregnant and she pushes that thing out, it just so happens to be a baby. It doesn't happen to be, it's not a giraffe. It's not a bear, right? It's not a toad. It's a baby every time.
But that's what you got to love about biology because, again, go back to if you take a look at an ovocyte, something that's, developing an embryo, and you look at the embryonic development at, call it 12 weeks, and you compare that embryologically along the spectrum to a kangaroo, a giraffe, a cow, the embryo at that stage, they all look the same.
Interesting.
And it's like, holy crap, like somebody had a plan. Somebody had a design. Are you telling me there's a thing called intelligent design? Are you kidding me? Are you really? Like, it's there. It's right in front of you. I don't know how you are. I don't even know why this is an argument anymore. Okay, your body, your choice. You bet. You had the choice as a man to sleep with that girl, and girl, you had that choice to sleep with that man. And if you didn't make that choice out of your mutual understanding of what you were getting into or out of coercion or whatever, there are consequences for that too. Like, this isn't linear in only one application.
Yeah, I love what Reagan also said, and I'll paraphrase. He said, do you realize the only person that doesn't get to choose is the unborn?
Yeah, I love that Reagan quote of, funny, all of you are born or are making this decision. You're all born.
I've noticed that everyone who is for abortion has already been born. It's such a simple concept. Why? Why are people so skewed by this?
I don't know if they are skewed anymore because if you look at what was the Alpha Center down in Sioux Falls, a pregnancy care center or whatever, when they're counseling women they want to get an abortion and they go through counseling, they say, well, you know that this is a child, and they show them the ultrasound and like, yeah, I know, but I want it out. I want it done. I'm done. So it's almost like it's like this.
I think irresponsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't want this responsibility. I don't want this right now.
Mm-hmm. But they're fully choosing to have it aborted. It's no debate now whether or not it's a baby or not. It's like they know. and yeah, I know. Just
But that's the
get
narrative
rid of it.
change of now it's my body, it's my choice. Not talking about it, the cause and effect of to what they're carrying, but it's my choice.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and it's the easy road. I mean, and I don't mean that lightly or disrespectfully, but it's the easy road to someone who's 20 years old. You know, what is there? The Plan B pill that you can go down to the pharmacy. And no questions asked. You can just get it over the counter. You can just say, I need the Plan B, and they'll just give it to you. And you go home and
no parental
consent, nothing. It's like getting aspirin.
Yeah.
You just have to ask for it because they don't leave it out on the counter.
But you can't get a pack of smokes.
You can't get Sudafed without getting ID'd.
You can't buy a 12-pack of beer, but you can kill your baby.
What did I tell you today about the book that I was reading? It's a children's book about how they're changing the terms now. So it's not eggs and sperm, that they changed it to seeds because now children aren't coming from traditional families anymore. So you don't want to offend them. So if they're more like, if they're doing...
Being germinated
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
seeded with pollen.
Yeah, there you go. How sad is that?
Oh, we would live in a world where we don't want to be confronted by difficulties.
Yeah.
So let's get the last word, everybody. Tell me what is your takeaway from today's conversation?
I am just humbled that you two shared your baby story. I had no idea. I mean, Tristan and we lost Kyler on May 25th, Memorial Day weekend, 2019, and we knew that it was not going to come to life. We knew that, but Trista, same idea of as long as he's in me, he has life, and I can feel him kick, and I don't care what anybody tells me, he's alive because he is. And we carried that precious moment with us, and Trista wasn't sure about if she wanted to meet him, and they said you have to because you'll regret every day if you don't. And you know, he was beautiful in his own way, but I take for granted that there are other people out there who've had that struggle. So I'm very grateful that you've shared and that you continue to testify for pro-life people out there. That's why you're here tonight.
Yeah, well, they say, a baby, that they won't make a difference in the world. He only lived, 3 hours? And I'm like, he got the last word because, yeah, he lived only 3 hours, but he entered politics and helped change pro-life laws in South Dakota, which is pretty humbling. So, yeah.
Yeah. If we could do that much with 3 hours of our life every day,
right,
we'd be pretty powerful.
right.
Yeah, Joseph did have the last word, didn't he?
Yep.
Here's my takeaway. When I was a kid, I always wondered, how did the Germans not see what Hitler was doing? You had good men and women in Germany, and they didn't do anything about it. Now, there was maybe a few, that's where that movie Valkyrie comes in, that tried to kill Hitler. But how could so many people be mistaken? And then you think about the abortion issue and all the stuff that's happening in the world today, and there's only one answer for me. Evil. Pure evil. Evil has infiltrated. And it's akin to living in Egypt. In prayer, I thought the Lord told me a few years back, you're really back in Egypt again. I took you out of there once, but you guys keep going back. And if you remember in Egypt, with all the idols that they worshipped, so many things were consecrated to Molech and the gods, right? And everywhere you went, you might have brought something home that is cursed or unclean. But we don't think about that in our culture. But now I do. I do think if I shop at certain stores, I wonder if this is cursed. And I know the answer, and it is yes, because a few years ago, we bought one of our kids a toy, and I won't say what store, but we bought a toy for their birthday. And as soon as he opened the toy up and started playing with it, I got a sick feeling immediately. No, I didn't say anything to my wife, but within the hour, she cornered me and she said, something's wrong with that toy. And I said, yep, I got the same exact thing. So
I think Judah did too. Didn't you? Yeah, he got the same thing.
So we had to destroy the toy. So what happened is we had another birthday party for him at my mom's. So I went ahead with him and I think one other son. And then the second car was going the next day. So my oldest two, they took a hammer to this toy and I think they destroyed it and they poured holy water in it and they put it in the garbage can and the garbage went out. I think that same day or the next day.
You got to back up though, because they tried to destroy it and they couldn't break it with a hammer.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Remember that? They tried and they took it like the center console. It was like this plastic piece thing. And they hit it with hammers and it would not break. And they came in like, we don't know, it won't break. We can't get it to break. I said, bless it with holy water. And so they doused it with holy water. And the first time they hit it, it broke. So the garbage is coming like, throw that thing away. Get this thing out of our house.
Isn't that crazy though?
Well, here's another quick story. We went to the fair out in Huron, the South Dakota State Fair. Who doesn't love the fair? So we went to the fair and my first time taking Judah. And I get to the station where you shoot a gun and you can get maybe a teddy bear or yada, yada, yada. So anyway, I end up giving all these dollars to this guy, you know. He totally took me for $25. But I wanted to get Judah a toy. Well, he chose a snake. So anyway, he was really happy with his snake. And kudos for Judah in this story. Because that night, I had a dream about this snake. And it was not a happy dream. It was a very evil dream. And this snake this dream is in full color. It was in, I felt like I was in the movie Dennis the Menace. It was those kind of colors. And this snake was trying to consume me. And I woke up. And I thought, what is happening? So I didn't think anything of it, to be honest with you. And I told her the next day, the morning, and she said, we got to get rid of that snake. So I told Judah what happened. And do you know what he said to me? He said, yeah, Papa, it makes me sad, but we do have to get rid of that snake. And I said, would you take it to the garbage? And he did. Took it to the garbage can.
Wow.
I didn't have any problems since. So, you know what, ladies and gentlemen? When you go shopping and you bring clothes, toys, it can't hurt to douse it with some holy water.
In a future podcast, we're going to have to talk about the order of Wiccans in the area.
Please, let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Make sure we pray up front a lot for that program.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll do it.
Thanks for joining the Glen Gauer podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Rumble, YouTube, and Google. May God strengthen the bars of your gates.